A beloved Georgia high school teacher went missing in 2005. More than 11 years later, 2 men are arrested, but will we ever know the truth of what happened? Tara Grinstead was a 30-year-old history teacher at the Irwin County High School in Issaquah, Georgia, when she was reported missing on October 24, 2005. Tara's best friend, Maria Woods Harbor, grew up with Tara in Hawkinsville, Georgia, about an hour north of Issaquah. She was radiant, says Maria. I mean, she had the biggest smile. She could tell you anything to make you feel better. Tara Grinstead had dreams of being a school administrator, and even someday a school principal. At the time she went missing, she was attending night school to earn a specialist degree. Tara Grinstead competed in beauty pageants to win scholarship money to further her education. In 1999, Tara Grinstead won the Miss Tifton pageant, which landed her a spot at the 1999 Miss Georgia competition. Her main goal was to win Miss Georgia, or at least to get to Miss Georgia, and she did, remembers Maria Woods Harbor. When Tara Grinstead no longer competed, she mentored other young women in the Issaquah area in the world of pageants. She just took me underneath her wing, remembers Dana Wilder. She taught me the ins and outs of interviews, hair and makeup, wardrobe. For around 6 years, Tara Grinstead dated Marcus Harper, a former Issaquah cop who joined the Army Rangers. Marcus was often overseas, and though they had broken up by the fall of 2005, friends say Tara was distraught about the relationship ending. Tara Grinstead was passionate about her job, teaching history at Irwin County High School. She was also the cheerleading coach. It was when she didn't show up at school on the morning of Monday, October 24, 2005, that friends and neighbors knew something was very wrong. When police entered Tara Grinstead's home, just down the street from downtown Issaquah, they found beauty supplies left out from when Tara had helped girls prepare for the local sweet potato pageant the Saturday before. Her bed was unmade and a bedside lamp was broken. Outside, in the front yard, investigators found a potential clue, a latex glove. It appeared that Tara may have left on her own, said former GBI Special Agent in charge Gary Rothwell. However, we had a glove, a latex glove, that we couldn't explain. So that gave us a stronger indication that something bad had happened. The latex glove was sent to a lab for testing. On the glove, lab techs identified Tara's DNA, and DNA of an unknown male. For years, rumors swirled around Issaquah, wondering what happened to Tara Grinstead, and who was responsible. Her dating life was closely examined, and authorities chased down leads across the country, but no one was named a suspect, or even a person of interest in her disappearance. In 2017, a woman named Brooke Sheridan came forward to the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, known as the GBI. She said her boyfriend, Bo Dukes, told her that he had helped his friend, Ryan Duke, cover up Grinstead's murder. The men had similar names but were not related. They had attended the Irwin County High School together, where Tara was a teacher. On February 21, 2017, Bo Dukes sat down for an interview with the GBI and told them that in October 2005, Ryan Duke came to him saying he had killed Grinstead and dumped her body in a pecan orchard that Bo Duke's family owned. Duke said that together, he and Ryan Duke burned Grinstead's body there in the orchard over the period of 2 days. After Bo Dukes went to the GBI, Ryan Duke, was arrested and charged with Tara's murder. Bo was arrested weeks later on charges relating to covering up the crime. In a voluntary interview with the GBI just before his arrest, Ryan Duke said he had been stealing from Tara's purse, high on drugs, when Grinstead came up behind him and he hit her. Ryan gave a DNA sample and it matched the unknown male DNA profile on the latex glove. In 2019, Bo Dukes, pictured, went on trial first in Wilcox County, Georgia, for charges related to helping conceal a crime. He was found guilty on all counts and sentenced to 25 years in prison. Ryan Duke then went on trial for murder in 2022, but his lawyers argued that he had given a false confession back in 2017, partially because he was afraid of his former friend. When Ryan took the stand, he testified that the morning after Tara went missing, Bo Dukes woke him up and admitted to killing Tara. Ryan testified that he did not know how Tara died, but that he had gone to the orchard with Bo, and he helped move her body before Bo lit the fire. In closing arguments, Ryan's attorneys also argued that the latex glove with Ryan's DNA on it could have been planted outside Tara's house by Bo. On May 20, 2022, a jury acquitted Ryan Duke of malice murder, felony murder, aggravated assault and burglary but found him guilty of concealing a death. On May 23, Ryan Duke was sentenced to 10 years in prison. Both men still face outstanding charges in a neighboring county, related to burning Tara's body there. Eight years after Conrad Roy sat in his truck and took his own life after being goaded into suicide by girlfriend Michelle Carter, the 18-year-old's parents say they are still haunted and are doing all they can to make sure no other family suffers as they have. Conrad Henry Roy was born in the Massachusetts town of Mattapoisett in 1995. As a child and teen, he struggled with social anxiety and depression. He worked with his father, grandfather and uncle at his family's maritime salvage company, Tucker Roy Marine Towing and Salvage Incorporated, while attending high school. In 2014, he earned his captain's license from the Northeast Maritime Institute, along with graduating from Old Rochester Regional High School with a 3.88 GPA. He was a standout student and athlete, landing himself on the honor roll and competing in baseball, rowing crew and track and field events. After graduating from high school, Roy was admitted to Fitchburg State University, but he elected not to pursue his degree in business at the time. Roy met Carter before graduation. The pair reportedly met for the first time in Florida in 2012 when they both happened to be in the state on family vacations. They discovered that they lived less than an hour apart from each other in Massachusetts. From there, Roy and Carter struck up a romantic relationship and dated for 2 years. Although they were both from neighboring suburbs in Massachusetts, they only saw each other in person a handful of times after their plans to meet up kept falling through. However, the pair had an intense relationship that they kept alive over texts, as they exchanged thousands of messages on serious topics ranging from Carter's experience with eating disorders to Roy's struggles with depression. Before his death, Conrad Roy recorded several video diaries in which he discusses his struggle for normalcy. The recordings were discovered after his death in 2014 and each one reveals his ruthless battle with self-examination and insecurity. Sadly, Conrad took his own life before anyone could tell what was going on. One night he headed out in his parents' truck and he never came home. A search ensued until authorities found his parents' truck in an empty parking lot. As you could imagine, Conrad's death hit his family very hard. Soon after his death, a young woman by the name of Michelle Carter reached out to his family. She claimed to have had a deep relationship with Conrad before his passing. She would eventually develop a relationship between Conrad's sisters and mother and father. She even put together a suicide prevention fundraiser in the name of Conrad. But little did the family know Michelle was keeping a dark secret. The night of Conrad's passing, Michelle was actually engaged in a text conversation with him, and upon going through Conrad's text, investigators would soon put together the twisted truth. Michelle Carter's text actually played a heavy part in Conrad's decision to take his own life that night. Not only did she try very hard to convince Conrad to take his own life, but during that time she was actually texting her friends things like, "Oh, Conrad's missing, they're looking for him right now." At that point, Conrad hadn't even left his house yet. While investigators had access to Conrad texts, they ran into one problem. They weren't able to prove that the phone was actually being used by Michelle and not her mom. Because the phone was registered to her mom, they couldn't prove in court that she was actually the one sending the texts. Although Michelle would become very close to Conrad's family, her phony friendliness would be short-lived because it was actually at this fundraiser where investigators were able to prove once and for all that the phone belonged to Michelle. What they did was they called her phone and they watched and recorded her picking it up. And what they found would only add to the sickening truth of the death of Conrad Roy. When they confiscated Michelle's phone, they were able to read and see thousands of text messages between the two. Her relationship with Conrad grew from an innocent teen love into a twisted and manipulating back and forth. Once the full length of Michelle's involvement with Conrad's death became clear, they broke it to Conrad's family. The young lady who had befriended them after Conrad's death was not the kind and innocent friend they once believed she was. Massive thread of texts revealed that Michelle went from trying to convince Conrad that his life was worth living to basically saying, "Screw it, kill yourself." She told Conrad things like, "You always say you're going to, but you never follow through." She basically bullied him into feeling guilty about not taking his own life, and sadly that continued until the fateful night of Conrad's death. The night of Conrad's death, he was in communication with Michelle through text and phone call. When the case went to court, Michelle was convicted basically for one reason. Conrad took his own life by poisoning himself with carbon monoxide. While he was doing this, he was both talking to Michelle on the phone and texting her. There was a point where Conrad got out of the truck scared and hopeless, probably looking for his long-lost friend Michelle to comfort him and talk some sense into him, but Michelle Carter was far from that friend. Her response was, "What are you doing? Get back in the truck." And because of that, the judge deemed it so that she was indeed responsible for coercing Conrad that night. The saddest part about this story is Michelle was convicted for involuntary manslaughter, sentenced to only 15 months in prison, 11 of which she served. Michelle Carter is a free woman. To anyone dealing with suicidal thoughts or tendencies, you are not alone. Call 1-800-273-8255. Joran van der Sloot, the 36-year-old Dutch killer and primary suspect in the 2005 disappearance and suspected murder of Alabama student Natalee Holloway, will be extradited from Peru to face justice in the U.S. Years after the 18-year-old Holloway vanished in Aruba, van der Sloot murdered a 21-year-old Peruvian woman named Stephanie Flores. He was indicted on charges of extortion and wire fraud in a federal court in Alabama in 2010 after allegedly trying to squeeze cash out of Holloway's family in exchange for the location of her remains. Peru officials announced late Wednesday that they would temporarily transfer custody to the U.S. Natalee Holloway, an 18-year-old from Mountain Brook, Alabama, a suburb of Birmingham, flew to Aruba with a large group of friends ahead of their high school graduation. On May 30, 2005, some friends went out to a nightclub and met van der Sloot, also 18 at the time. He and Holloway were seen leaving the bar together. Holloway failed to make her flight home. The Dutch national and two of his friends, brothers Sadish and Deepak Kalpo, were early suspects. Police arrested van der Sloot but eventually released him due to a lack of evidence. Police eyed the suspects again in 2007 after uncovering new facts but wound up releasing them once more. Holloway's remains were never found. Stephanie Flores, 21, was a business student from a wealthy Peruvian family who crossed paths with van der Sloot on May 30, 2010, 5 years to the day after Holloway's disappearance. She wound up dead for it. Van der Sloot later claimed he killed her in a fit of anger after she learned about his connection to Holloway's disappearance. They had met earlier in her father's casino in Lima, and he beat her to death in his hotel room the following morning. In June 2010, the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Northern District of Alabama announced an indictment on extortion and wire fraud charges against van der Sloot for allegedly trying to sell information about the whereabouts of her body to her family. He wanted $250,000, $25,000 upfront and the rest upon the positive identification of her remains. After receiving $10,000, according to prosecutors, he led the family's lawyer John Hugh Kelly to a site he claimed Holloway's remains were buried. He lied, according to the indictment. The body was not there and still has not been found. In January 2012, van der Sloot pleaded guilty to Flores' murder and received a 28-year prison sentence. Peru authorities this week announced they would temporarily release him from custody to face charges in the U.S. In the same week of January, a judge also granted Holloway's father's request to declare her legally dead. Dave Holloway wanted to halt payments on her health insurance and free up funds from her college savings account to use for her younger brother. In a ceremony held inside his prison in Peru, van der Sloot married Lydie Figueroa in July 2014, who was 24 years old and 7 months pregnant at the time. He told her he wanted to marry her all over again once his sentence was up, the Associated Press reported at the time. In May 2023, Holloway's mother, Beth Holloway, announced the extradition in a statement, and Peru officials later confirmed they had agreed to transfer him to U.S. custody temporarily to face justice. Almost exactly 18 years later, her perpetrator, Joran van der Sloot, has been extradited to Birmingham to answer for his crimes, she said. Gustavo Mezaquadra, Peru's ambassador to the U.S., said he hopes this action will enable a process that will help to bring peace to Mrs. Holloway and to her family, who are grieving in the same way that the Flores family in Peru is grieving for the loss of their daughter. On Friday, May 12, van der Sloot's defense lawyer Maximo Altez told Fox News Digital that he would fight extradition if his client wants him to, but he hadn't been able to speak with him yet. Some of van der Sloot's family, he said, believes the extradition may lead to an upgrade in his circumstances. The Kalapalka prison is the worst prison in the world, Altez said of the maximum security prison where his client was being held. Joran is in hell. He would go to a hell that is more comfortable. Van der Sloot is one step closer to U.S. extradition as of May 2023, as Peruvian authorities move him from the remote, mountaintop Kalapalka prison to another facility in Lima, closer to the airport from where he is expected to fly to American soil. He is expected to undergo a series of medical evaluations, including a COVID-19 test, prior to his transfer to U.S. custody. Holloway would be 36 years old today. February 9, 2005, an Indiana brother and sister killed their mother after she refused to join them in a plot to kill their grandparents for their money, and then they went ahead and killed the elderly couple. Marion County Prosecutor Carl Britzi said Kenneth Allen Jr., 29, and his sister, Kari Allen, 18, of Noblesville, were both charged with 3 counts of murder, along with conspiracy and robbery charges. Kari Allen may not have directly participated in physically killing her relatives, but she acted as a lookout, the prosecutor said. The siblings were being held in Missouri, where they were arrested after their behavior during a traffic stop made police suspicious. Officers said they found bloody clothes and other evidence in the car. Under questioning by Missouri police, the two confessed Tuesday to killing their mother and grandparents in late December and early January, police said. The brother and sister allegedly told police they entombed the bodies in concrete in the grandparents' home on the east side of Indianapolis. Police began a search for the bodies of Sharon Allen, 53, of Noblesville, Leander Bradley, 91, and Betty Bradley, 75. They found what they believed to be human remains in recently poured concrete in the basement floor. Authorities then enlisted a University of Indianapolis anthropologist to examine the scene. Investigators believe the siblings killed Sharon Allen in her Noblesville apartment on or about December 30, 2004. They approached their mother, and they had a conversation about killing the grandparents. She refused, and she was knifed to death up in Noblesville, Britzi said. They then sometime later summoned the grandmother to that same home in Noblesville and smothered her to death with a plastic bag. Britzi said investigators believe the siblings went to the Bradleys' house on January 3, 2005 and killed Leander Bradley with a hammer. Investigators believe the motive for the slayings was financial. Authorities in St. Charles County, MO, said Kenneth Allen and Kari Allen confessed to the killings after an officer pulled their rental car over for speeding Tuesday morning on Interstate 70 just west of St. Louis. Police said the siblings were acting nervous and gave conflicting answers as to where they were going and why. An officer searched the trunk and found jewelry, credit cards, more than $1,000 in cash, bloody sheets and pillows, and identification belonging to Leander and Betty Bradley, he said. Missouri authorities contacted Indianapolis police, who searched the couple's home and found what they believed to be recently poured concrete in the basement. When Missouri authorities told Kari Allen about the concrete, she confessed. Without even asking, she came out and said, "I'm sorry, we killed my mom and my grandparents and buried them in the basement," said Swope, who added that Kenneth Allen confessed to the slayings later. The Allen siblings were being held today in Missouri. People who live near the Bradleys' home said they haven't seen the couple in weeks. One neighbor, Doug David, said he believes he saw the grandchildren there around Christmas. The grandson got a portable electric jackhammer out of the car and took it in, David said. What I thought was the granddaughter came running back out and grabbed a couple of 5-gallon buckets with shovels in them. David and other neighbors said they saw what they considered odd activity at the house recently. The whole neighborhood did, neighbor Merlin Andrews said. We all thought we should call them, just in case, and nobody did. He never knew the name of the woman he killed all those years ago, back in Arizona. He could have easily gotten away with murder, but then Walmart intervened. In 2015, jurors found a High Point man guilty of second-degree murder in the 1997 shooting death of a 17-year-old high school senior. Matthew Edward Gibson, 22, stared straight ahead, expressionless, as a courtroom clerk polled jurors about their verdict, which followed about 19 hours of deliberations over 4 days. Judge Jerry Cash Martin sentenced Gibson to a minimum of 13 years and 1 month in prison. Gibson's attorney, Robert Winfrey, said the verdict will be appealed. Prosecutors contended that Gibson urged his friend, Marcus Keon Harris, to fire a gun near a crowd of people who were hanging out in the Five Points area of High Point after a high school football game September 6, 1997. Jacob Walker, who had started at cornerback for Andrews High School, was shot once in the head across the street from where Gibson and Harris stood. Gibson testified during the 2-week trial that he asked Harris to fire the gun because Gibson feared for his safety. Gibson had just escaped a fight with Reginald Briley, his ex-girlfriend's boyfriend. In their verdict, jurors rejected Gibson's claim that he was acting in self-defense. Gibson was found guilty even though he didn't fire the gun that prosecutors believe killed Walker. Under state law, a person who aids somebody in a crime can be just as guilty as the person who committed the crime. John Jones, the jury foreman, said he believed Gibson encouraged Harris to fire the gun. That tied the two people together, Jones said after the verdict in Guilford Superior Court in High Point. Gibson maintains that authorities have the wrong man, Winfrey said. "We are totally befuddled with the verdict," Winfrey said. All he did was seek to defend himself. Winfrey had argued during the trial that there wasn't sufficient evidence to conclude that the bullet from Harris's gun killed Walker. After Harris fired his gun, about 200 people in the area scattered, and some fired their own guns, according to testimony. Deliberations were tense and stressful as several jurors flip-flopped on the question of Gibson's guilt or innocence, Jones said. One juror cried in the court hallway during deliberations last week. Jurors on Thursday requested a box of tissues. Friday, jurors said they were deadlocked, with 10 favoring guilt and 2 favoring innocence. The judge asked them to reconcile their differences. They struggled with it in themselves to come up with the truth, Jones said. All of us didn't see the same truth at first. Kathy Walker, the victim's mother, cried as she left the courtroom in the arms of 2 security guards. She did not comment. Assistant District Attorney Tom Jarrell said prosecutors were pleased with the verdict. "We feel that justice was done," he said. Harris, 23, was charged with first-degree murder. In February 2015, he entered an Alford plea to attempted second-degree murder, which means he will be treated as guilty although he does not admit guilt. Prosecutors have recommended that Harris serve a minimum of 3 years and 8 months in prison, but he has not been sentenced by a judge, according to court records. In March of that year, prosecutors offered Gibson a chance to plead guilty to voluntary manslaughter. The plea agreement would have set Gibson free since he has been in jail since his arrest the day of the shooting. Gibson rejected the agreement. Thank you for watching. Make sure you subscribe and like the video, and click the bell icon to stay tuned.